She thumps a cane and drinks champagne. She's formidable and judgmental, but we can guarantee that she's a quintessential Lady D, who recognizes great potential. What would Danbury do?
Once upon a time, there were 3 grown women who made plans. Then the big bad pandemic came along and thwarted those plans. But haha, the women were crafty and flexible and had access to good internet connections. So they showed initiative and made different plans. Which is all to say that our first ever in-person record is not happening today, friends. But just as an oil portrait can handle a rainstorm, so too can we handle the downpour of border closures. It's our season finale Q&A episode, and we're ready to take it on. This episode is brought to you by Kensington's newest release from Minerva Spencer, Outrageous. Outrageous is the second book in Minerva's Rebels of the Ton series, which centers on the younger generation of London aristocracy who are all about breaking the rules and finding their own destinies. In Outrageous, our heroine, Eva de Courtney, comes up with a plan to protect her brother. She'll kidnap the notorious Godric Fleming and force him to leave her brother alone. But things go awry when she gets him in her carriage, and it becomes unclear whomst is kidnapping whomst, and where this carriage ride might end. Booklist called Minerva's books an irresistible cocktail of smart characterization, sophisticated sensuality, and sharp wit. And frankly, we are powerless against a trope reversal, and we stand a forward-thinking heroine. You can find Outrageous and the other books in the Rebels of the Ton series by Minerva Spencer anywhere books are found, and learn more on minervaspencer.com.
Hi, I'm Rudy.
I'm Adele.
And I'm Kate.
I just want to say how disappointed I'm not together with the both of you. I mean, Skype is great and all, but it would have been nice to give Rudy a hug, but...
I don't.
You don't hug?
No. Are you surprised?
No, not at all.
Adele would have hugged you anyway, Rudy.
I probably
It just would have happened.
I know consent is key, but...
Yeah.
I have one friend who I know loves hugs. Like, they're very important to her. And I have the attitude where, like, it doesn't hurt me as much as it helps her. For that friend, I'm like, fine, whatever. Like, it's fine.
Where is she in the rankings?
Quite high up.
But I would expect a 3 or above maybe for a hug. Yeah.
Well, it's all about like understanding love languages, right? Although, I mean, all that being said, love languages have pretty much been discredited. But also like,
and also that dude is trash.
I know.
I still like it as a concept, though.
It is, but it is a good concept, right? Because you have to think about what your love language is versus what theirs is, and I mean it's just part of, I suppose it's a good framework for thinking about what people need in a relationship and how to balance that with what you need. So
what I found out is that when your friend does really love hugs and you don't, maybe don't tell them that it's a net neutral moment for you. Like that you've like sat down and worked out the mathematics and kind of went,
I mean, but that they would expect that from you, Rudy. Like, friendship is numbers for you.
Anyway, questions.
All right, here we go. So first question is from Robin E. Have you noticed that Quinn sets up a sad parallel between Violet and Lucy? In one of the earlier books, I can't remember which one, Violet reflects that she told Edmund that Hyacinth would be her last pregnancy and then he died. In On the Way to the Wedding, Lucy tells Gregory that the twins would be the last pregnancy and then she nearly dies. Is this history correcting itself, an author repeating herself, or just lots of babies and acknowledging the improbability that one would give birth that many times and remain unscathed?
I suspect it's a symptom of what we've discussed a lot on this podcast, is that Quinn likes to mirror or have patterns of things that happen. And I'm not entirely sure she does it deliberately or that she just has like certain things that she likes to repeat. But you're right. There's a shit ton of babies in that book series. And like, honestly, their survival rate is pretty exceptional.
Yeah, I think as somebody who's had 2 babies and is definitely scathed. Can one be scathed? Only in
Sure.
Europe. So I think I look, and honestly, like in situations like this, particularly given that this epilogue that we're talking about is very short, like having her on death's door is a really good way of ramping up the emotions real fast in a real short amount of time. So I think it also just really suited like that epilogue format because it allowed her to take a lot of shortcuts as a writer and get to deep conflict really quickly.
I feel like Lucy is the most Violet-esque of...
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait. Unless it's Kate.
Kate is the most like Violet, but certainly Lucy is the one that mirrors the fecundity of Violet. So, yeah. But I mean, we talked about this as well, about how Quinn really only seems to be able to write 2 kinds of women.
3.
Like she either, is it 3?
Because it's
Like
she writes Violets, she writes Penelopes.
And Hyacinths.
Hyacinths.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense that we would see that come back again.
And that all women are either going to grow up to be a Violet or a Danbury.
We're in fact doing a Julia Quinn, one might say, by just reflecting on all of the things that we've done before instead of giving a new answer. Thank you for your
the next one.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Robin. Next question from Amalie. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I love it. The snark, the love, and the critical questions. The interview with Hilary Davidson about Regency fashion was a delight, and the emphasis on breasts and nipples somehow really adds light to your discussion of Anthony the Boob Man from Series 1. So thank you for that bit of implicit, delightful continuity.
You're welcome.
Not so much a question as a comment from Amalie, but I wanted to include it because I didn't pick up on that. Did you guys?
No.
Maybe it's less of Anthony being a boob man, as like literally everybody could be a boob man if they had been.
I stand by the reading that I took from Whoamance and have applied to the Bridgerton series, that boob men are life-driven and butt men are death-driven, in a Freudian sense. I stand by it, and it continues to work when applied to Anthony.
Oh, God, we talk a lot of shit, don't we?
How dare.
All right, here we go. Wait. Okay, so this is a big question, so I want you to prepare yourselves. From Kirsten, what must I do to get your list of favorite romance novels, or does one already exist? And then she says in parentheses, I can only hope. Kirsten, we don't currently have a list of our favorite romance novels, but that is a very good idea, and I think that we should probably put one together. In the meantime, favorite romance novels. That's a huge question. Maybe I can do favorite romance authors, like Sherry Thomas, Courtney Milan, Sarah MacLean. I've been reading Cherish Reid a lot lately, and I really have been enjoying that. She's only got 3 books out, but I read her first one and then picked up the next 2 and read them immediately afterwards. Who else do I really love? Alyssa Cole, Alicia Rye. I just finished this really fun science fiction romance trilogy by... the author's name has escaped me, but the first book is called Polaris Rising, and it's about
Jessie Mahalik.
Yes, Jessie Mahalik, that's right. The first one's about space princess who decides that she doesn't want to be a princess anymore and becomes a space pirate. And then the next 2 are also about her space princess sisters who realize that the world's really shit and they want to make it better. So they go about doing that in their own separate ways. And that was really fun as well.
I'm so proud.
It was a really good rec. I like tore through all 3 of them. They were really great.
The problem is my favorite romance novels will change on any given day.
So I think most recently, like the newish authors that I've found are like Alexis Hall, who wrote Boyfriend Material.
Oh my God, I loved that book. That had such red, white, and royal blue energy to it, but it was completely
Kirsten
different.
Kristen, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about red, white, and royal blue.
Yeah. Recently, I read Elena Armas's The Spanish Love Deception, which is like has all the tropes in it, like sharing a bed and fake dating, and it's just kind of fabulous. Like, I'm a stand for Mariana Zapata. Very slow burn, but damn, I love the tension, and it's really good to support a Latinx writer who writes women of color as well. Helena Hunting, like she used to write some really sort of slapstick hockey books, but they've gotten better. They've gotten less slapsticky and more like serious. And right now I'm reading the new Kristen Callahan from the VIP series. I love Kristen Callahan. Lucy Parker, obviously. I think we've mentioned her a couple of times. Melbourne's own Sarah Mabry is someone I always enjoy her contemporary takes. And she's been, I think she's been writing a lot of sort of American-based stuff. Mia Sosa. I've been reading a lot more contemporary in the last few years, which I didn't used to read at all. But my favorite sort of slice of contemporary romance is sports romance for whatever reason, whether it's like straight or gay couples. I kind of dig it. So, yeah. And obviously a lot of the authors that Kate has already mentioned, because I get a lot of my recommendations from people like Kate and Rudy because I trust their judgment and their reading taste.
Unveiled by Courtney Milan is, like, this might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it is the pivotal book. If you're going to be a Courtney Milan stan, which I strongly recommend everyone become, this is the book that made her realize that she didn't want to be writing historical romance novels, Regency romance novels that had entirely white characters. I'm not going to belabor the point, but like there is a moment, there's a scene that she was writing that made her think, why am I buying into this Eurocentric beauty ideals bullshit? Like, particularly as a woman of color who was writing romance novels, like, why? She was already a subversive author, but that's when she like really went for it. So Unveiled is my Courtney Milan pick. I also really, really love Talia Hibbett's Get a Life, Chloe Brown.
Those ones are so good. All three of them are great, but yeah, Chloe Brown is amazing.
I feel like a hipster as I say this, and I'm like, I actually got all of my friends onto Talia Hibbett.
Take it,
but then
it, revel in it, yeah.
But then some of them outstripped me and started to like read more of her books faster. And I remember being super mad at a friend of mine because she read Chloe Brown first. And I had been kind of putting it off for different reasons. And when she finally was like, no, like you actually need to make time for this. And then I read it and I was furious at the fact that I was not the early adapter, that I wasn't. It's the kind of book that makes you want to be the person, like that obnoxious person who was like, I told you.
When you know you've got a good book. Yeah. Can I recommend one I've just finished reading?
Yeah.
It's called Shipped. It's by Angie Hockman, and it's they're using this not tagline, but line to describe it, and it's entirely accurate. It's The Hating Game crossed with The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, and it's fantastic. It's two people who work in digital marketing for a cruise ship line, and they're both competing for a new job, and so they both go on the cruise to, do some user research. And it's just fabulous. Like, the cast of characters is really great. And in this time when a lot of us are stuck in our houses because of COVID, it's really nice to have a vicarious holiday experience. So I would very much recommend Shipped. It's really fun.
My third rec is, and this I promise will be my last one, my third rec is A Lily Among Thorns by Rose Lerner. I saw her describe it as a romance novel for Jane Austen fans whose favourite hero is Mr. Tilney. And I was like, yeah, that's accurate. That's Samson, the hero, is like just a truly kind-hearted person. And he's going through something quite intense at the time that the book starts, but he meets this very kind of very sharp personality. She doesn't have a lot of time for bullshit and she doesn't have a lot of time for kindness, but keeps kind of, I guess, like being undone by the fact that even when she is cutting to him, he still treats her well. And so I love their dynamic. You might notice that a lot of those names, like a lot of those authors have featured in our What Would Danbury Do? And that's for a reason. Like, we quite sincerely love the books that we are talking about in that.
This is from Liz. Was listening to your episode and the part about the show Anthony neglecting his responsibilities stood out to me. I picked that up on my watch as well. Good watching, Liz. What bothered me is that's not book compliant. Anthony in the books is deeply, deeply flawed. He's a rake, a jerk, arrogant, emotionally stunted, take your pick. But he's never neglectful towards his siblings or in his responsibilities to his family. At the beginning of The Viscount Who Loved Me, before she's met him, Kate abhors everything about Anthony, but even then has a begrudging respect for his devotion to the family. I don't know that I like the change for the show because it only really serves to prop up Simon and Daphne. Honestly, the antagonist of season 1 isn't Cressida or Nigel even. It's set up to be Anthony at the detriment of his characterization. Book Anthony would never force Daphne into marriage. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's noted that he lets her reject any and all offers she wants. Book Anthony tries to be reasonable with Simon even at the jaw. I understand the need to make Simon and Daphne look better by comparison, but the fact that it comes at the cost of Anthony's characterization is kind of sucky. They have to get viewers to believe that Anthony is the best example of an older brother for next season to help push at Kate and Anthony, since they really bond over their roles as elder siblings and their trauma with death. And season 1 kind of ruins both of those, considering they changed Anthony's motivation for a loveless marriage from not wanting to leave a widow who would miss him to being sad about Sienna. Anyway, those were some rambling opinions. I just wondered what you thought. Thanks very much for asking that, Liz. So, Kate, you look like your face has opinions.
No, well, it's more that Liz is saying these are some rambling opinions. Like, that's not just what we do every single time we sit down in front of the microphone. Like, this is the podcast for rambling opinions.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. Certainly show Anthony is not the same big brother that book Anthony is. I think that in a lot of ways, it's one of those aspects where what works in books can't work in television because we don't have point of view. We also need some shorthand in order to make huge character leaps that can be done from a visual perspective as opposed to a reading perspective. And look, I think Anthony does a lot of growing up through the season. Like, at the very beginning, he's obviously not the same person that he is at the end. He sort of has to do that on camera so that viewers who aren't familiar with the books understand that, you know, his and Sienna's relationship during the course of the show was an immature relationship. He wasn't ready for a proper connection. He didn't understand about compromise and taking people as they are and recognizing what's actually necessary in a relationship so that he can go into, you know, his season, next season, with that kind of maturity and emotional thoughtfulness that is necessary for a true romantic hero. I'm going to be incredibly interested in what they do to set up Anthony and Kate next season. Certainly, I'm going to be really interested in how Anthony's character changes and whether this new maturity that we see sort of at the end of the last season is built on and developed in season 2, or if he still remains sort of a bit of a hot-headed, emotionally immature rake. I'm also really interested in whether he is still going to be super into outdoor sex, just from a personal point of view.
That's the first time we see him in season 1 is having outdoor sex.
But not just outdoor sex, like outdoor sex in a public space.
Yeah.
In front of a servant.
Because as discussed, Daphne and Simon end up not that shy about having sex outdoors. But they're doing that on their estate. So the only people that are going to see them are, like, their own servants. Which, you know, like, take from that what you will. But, like, Anthony has sex in public spaces a couple of times.
If they lose the outdoor sex thing, I'm going to be bummed because I kind of want him to be so... Like, the thing with him and Kate is it's, like, kind of compulsive. Like, he can't help himself. And, like, I would love that to be the case with Kate as well.
You know how, like, the bee thing, like, the bee sting and sucking the venom out has always been ridiculous and will always be ridiculous. But, like, I think there's an added element of legitimacy to it when you look at it from the, like, show Anthony perspective of, like, he's into outdoor public sex. And it actually would be, like, perfectly reasonable for him to be sucking on a tit. Like,
in the garden, because he's clearly done it before.
So I've just had a disturbing thought, and I can't help but share it. Building on my disturbing thought from last episode.
We're not saying that thought out loud. We're not manifesting that into the universe. Dix.
Does that mean if it's his dad in bee form, his dad stings Kate?
Adele, Kate and I just had a meeting real quick, and you're actually out of the podcast.
Look, the thing for me, I'm totally with you, Liz. Like, Anthony, I'm very invested in Anthony. I think they've left him at a great place for his story to start. It's got him very het up, very determined in his point of view, but it's about himself as opposed to projecting his shit on his sister.
I'm a little bit in the same boat as Liz, and that the choices that were made disappointed me because I feel like there was ways of making him still be a supportive brother without sucking the tension out of the story.
It's almost like they didn't think he could be interesting whilst being a functional member of the family. Like they needed to establish a storyline for him in season 1, and it was being an asshole.
Maybe I almost have the opposite viewpoint in that they were afraid to let him just be boring. He's not the main character of that season, and he did not need to try and be one.
They had right there Mr. Thornton being all buttoned up tight and super responsible and all worried about the people who rely on him as a very credible lead character. I mean, the point is they could have done it. You're quite right. Yeah. And they had, like, it had already worked really well, as every romance reader who has ever watched a television knows.
Yeah, we have to remember that they had to create storylines for each character outside of what would happen in their series/book. So Anthony couldn't be at the same place he was in book 1, really. Like, they needed to give him something more dynamic, and he was also an entry point for Sienna, which allowed for representations of different class. So, I mean, he was a bit of a delivery device and an antagonist, but Jonathan Bailey did well.
For me, Anthony is very much starting season 2 at a deficit. I genuinely dislike him as a character. I guess it's not necessarily a bad thing because, like, literally one of my favorite scenes in their book is one of the most awful moments between them, like where he throws the key in order to humiliate her, and then she realizes that that's his intention. Like, it's not a bad thing, but it also, I guess it disappoints me.
Does it help establish a pattern of behaviour with some of the stuff they've done in season 1, though? Like being super reactive and kind of mean.
Maybe, but again, like, I think that all this really boils down to the fact that they decided to make this Daphne's debut season instead of, like, make it her first season instead of her fourth. And then they had to fix a fuck ton of problems that caused, because suddenly they have to have some kind of imperative for why she needs to get married in her first season. And that means familial pressure that otherwise did not exist.
From B, there's a weird trend of leading men from romance films and TV shows leaving the series early. For example, Sanditon. How do you guys feel about Regé-Jean's decision to leave Bridgerton after 1 season? This is a good question. People were outraged, B. You know this. Outraged. But it was part of his contract. Like, there's really nothing for him to do after this season. And actually, it's great for his career. So I'm happy for him, actually.
So there's a big difference between Regé-Jean leaving the sort of the main cast of Bridgerton and Theo James leaving the main cast of Sanditon. For Bridgerton in particular, they're telling the stories through the different seasons of Bridgerton the same way that a book series works. So in this case, each season is going to have a different set of main characters. And there's going to be, you know, ongoing stories and ongoing characters. Obviously, the Bridgertons are a very close family, and you're not ever going to get rid of them. But realistically, the focus is going to change on every season. So it made perfect sense that Regé-Jean left, because, you know, he's not going to have a major role in the series anymore. And just because he's left the main cast doesn't mean that he won't show up. Like, there's nothing stopping him being a guest star or, you know, having a small role every now and again. But realistically, next season, essentially, Daphne and Simon's story is over. And we move on to Anthony and Kate. And then in season 3, we move on to Benedict and Henry. And then going forward, you know, from... You're not the only one who can manifest, damn it. But, like, Theo James left before the story was finished. So in terms of what a romance adaptation should look like the main hero shouldn't leave before we get to the end of the romance story. And I know this isn't part of your question, but it's something I've been thinking about an awful lot since they mentioned that Sanditon was getting another season. And that is that I really hope they recast that role instead of bringing in a new hero. I think they'll just have
Claire for the win, architect for the win.
No, like, just have Theo James go away as he was going, and then come back, and he's like, "Oh, I was in an accident, and now I look different, but I'm still the same man." And then we can just go forward with our lives.
I think the big difference is there was a narrative intent with Regé doing 1 season. Another show I was thinking about, I don't watch it, but I see it on Tumblr sometimes, is When Calls the Heart. Constable Jack left, I think, after season 5, after marrying Elizabeth. So then they had to bring in another, like, Canadian Mountie to romance. So, but honestly, it's not interesting to watch 2 people in love for like 14 seasons, and it's not very challenging on actor level. But Regé-Jean is blowing up, so good for him.
I think one of the things that B is tapping into, though, is that Theo James had some very unromantic things to say about leaving. For me, the difference is not so much that it was narratively dictated. It's that Regé-Jean signed up because he knew that it was going to end with a happy ending, and that it was going to end with, like, his character in love, I guess, like, emotionally whole. He talks about that. Like, he talks about that being part of the appeal, whereas we've got this, like, too cool for the genre dude who's literally trashing fans' expectations or, like, fans' wish of seeing a romance that ends happily. and acting like it's more interesting to have it not end happily.
I think it's disappointing, but we haven't actually got enough, romance films, like TV shows, to really see what happens, what this looks like if it goes for a long time. And maybe Bridgerton is going to be that leading light. Maybe Bridgerton goes for 8 seasons.
I mean, you also have, like, I'm just sort of thinking now, Henry Golding has talked about, like, he really wanted to do an Austen, and he's Mr. Elliot. Like, he's the guy that does not get the girl. And people are just like, okay, but that's when we said we wanted you in an Austen, this is not what we didn't mean be Mr. Elliot. We meant be Captain Wentworth.
Yeah, it reminds me of that campaign a few years ago with John Cho as well. Like, is such an amazing romantic lead and hasn't really been given those opportunities. I guess we can only hope that there will be more romance TV shows that get the green light, and that they will hire non-Theo James types.
But they'll hire actors who genuinely believe in the ethos of that story and of this genre.
From Mia, what was your favourite Easter egg in the season? Rudy, have a thought?
I thought that my favourite Easter egg was the compilation portrait that Nancy talked about behind Queen Charlotte. That was like it was a painting of an actual peer, but also like sort of, I guess, like meshed with an actual painting of a person of colour, so that he was made to look like he was a peer. And I thought that was really cool, and I loved that. And then today, Amalie pointed out that there's a lot of nipples in Regency dress, and Anthony's a boob man, and now that's my favourite Easter egg.
Thank you, Amalie. I think for me, I really, really enjoyed the music choices that were made and the music that they chose to play under certain scenes. And I really enjoyed the classicalization of some pop songs that had in and of themselves some hidden messages into what was going on narratively. And I really liked that, particularly because someone had put a lot of thought into that. And I really appreciate when people do put some thought into what they're doing and how things can be interpreted. But I also liked that it worked regardless. Like, the music was always going to work as part of the scene. It was only if you recognized the song and knew something about the lyrics that you got that extra little frisson of meaning that just added a little bit of nuance and depth to the scene. So yeah, and I think Thank You Next was my favorite because I think it was the first one that I noticed, like the first time that I really noticed. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, I see what you're doing there. I like it.
I really did like the Wildest Dreams one that everyone's using for their wedding march, but yeah. Obviously the mention of Anthony's mallet, I think in the last episode, was great, but something I read about but didn't notice during the season was apparently at one point Violet is talking to Anthony about his future wife, and she is embroidering tulips and said, like, your wife might like these in the future, and he does give tulips to Kate in book 2, so that's pretty cute. As you know, Anthony and Kate stan, so season 2 will be my life.
I'm still not entirely sure that we didn't read way too much into this, but I did kind of like the subtle way that the colors that the characters wore changed over the course of the season as well.
I don't know if this is a question or a statement, but let's just go. From Justice for Benedict. You guys have dragged Book Benedict a lot, even though he doesn't deserve it, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, but seem to really like Show Benedict. Are you finally ready to admit that you were too harsh about my boy Benedict?
No.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Moving on.
Sorry, Justice. No. No. Book Benedict is still the worst. That nothing has changed in that regard. And obviously the writers and showrunner realized that Book Benedict was the actual worst. And we're like, we can't put this guy on screen. He's the worst. And made him better for TV.
By giving him Colin's personality.
I have a different stance as to why I say no.
All right, you go ahead.
I have always liked Benedict of The Duke and I. I've always liked that man. He fell off a chair. He's great. He's charming. He's fun. That's who we just spent time with. I fully intend to dislike season 3 Benedict.
No.
The villain turn.
Henry would never get with Book Benedict. Henry knows better.
That is a fair point. He does not deserve my faith or my trust.
I do want to say, Justice, though, that you are by far not the only person who has made this point to us, that your compatriots are out there. Yeah. There are others like you who also believe that Benedict is in fact not the worst.
There are others who continue to listen to our bullshit, who do actually, who agree with you. I assume they rage listen.
So while we might not agree with you, just know that your people are out there. They're out there. Yeah. Loving somewhere. Benedict.
Yeah.
Thinking that book is good.
From E on Twitter. In light of casting a South Asian actress as Kate and the show being colour conscious, not colour blind, do you think the show will have to address British Indian imperialism? I mean, Anthony would be serving in the same House of Lords that would be subjugating Kate's home country. This is a very good point, E. Well, also the Bridgerton's money would be coming from places that probably won't be depicted on this show.
I feel like we have discussed enough through the course of this season to have come to the conclusion that the show's version of color conscious is not necessarily a universal version of color conscious. I applaud the opportunity for seeing many different actors on screen in stories that they have not historically had roles in. But I think that we would all be fooling ourselves if we think that there's going to be any level of engagement on historic or even contemporary racism and colonialism and the tragic and traumatic effects of imperialism in the show.
I think that they're going to give it a red hot go and it will be infuriating.
Oh no, yeah. I can't. Is your version worse or better than mine where they just ignore it altogether? I honestly
I'm with Rudy.
I'm not like in the same way that they gave it a red hot go to try and address the fact that this is an equitable universe in which race does not matter, except that it does. I think that they're going to have a go at trying to explain why it's okay for Kate as a Southeast Asian woman to be in a relationship with someone who is effectively an oppressor. Like, I don't expect to see an Aboriginal cast member at all in this series, in the however many seasons it's getting, despite the fact that England is very much at this point in time colonizing Australia, and there are there are historical instances of Aboriginal people going to England, like interacting with the upper class. Like, I'm not expecting to see that, and it's because this is a show that's made by Americans, and I don't think they actually... I don't fully believe that Americans understand colonialism to start with. So there's a lot of messiness that I'm expecting to come through next season. And part of the messiness will be that they will attempt to tidy it up and make it worse.
I think the same thing, because I think a huge part of Anthony, as previously discussed, is his entitlement and his bravado and everything. And I could really see Kate pushing back on that. Why would you not do that? It would be so much fun, but they would do it badly. But yeah, I think it's an opportunity. I think if 82 million people are watching it in the first month, it's an opportunity that they should utilize, but hopefully a bit more thoughtfully than they did in season 1. But I don't have any hope for it, really.
Do you think they're going to use Kate as some kind of manic pixie woke girl to show Anthony the error of his ways and introduce him to non-privileged classes and etc.?
That's actually a really interesting thought, because Simon didn't have to do that. But I wonder how much that had to do with the fact that he's a male character in a heterosexual relationship with, there's no, in their case, Daphne was the moral compass.
Well, and I think in the Bridgerton universe, it was that hierarchy of oppression, Simon was a man and a peer, and thus had a great deal of privilege and freedom, whereas Daphne, even though she had a great deal of privilege as a member of the peerage, she was nonetheless a woman as well, and it's that...
And intersectionality does not exist, so it's fine.
That's exactly right. So they didn't have... Simon's position in society meant that they just sort of glossed over that part altogether. Because really, it's only the women who acknowledge it in the season too, isn't it? It's only Lady Danbury who makes mention of it. It's not really mentioned at any other time.
They really work to make you buy into the idea that the only kind of social privilege that exists is gendered. There's a passing reference to maybe queerness is not something that you can be open about. But even then, that's like a sentence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea of bringing imperialism and colonialism into this conversation. Look, we're gonna have some things to say next season, I think.
Ultimately, I think our answer is brace yourself, because one way or the other is gonna be a shit show.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, E. Yeah. All right. From Lulu. In the first season of Bridgerton, we heard classical covers of contemporary songs. If they continue this for season 2 and beyond, what one song are you hoping for? And which character or scene would it go with? I
actually know a song I would love, and I know Vitamin String Quartet has already covered it, and it's Mr. Brightside, because that is a great song, and the cover of it by Vitamin String Quartet is wonderful. And for some reason, that song's really big in Australia and I think the UK. So I can see that happening.
Who would you pair it with?
It's totally Anthony. If you think about the lyrics of that song, it's not actually about being Mr. Brightside.
You know what? I really think that I could definitely see Eloise getting into some OG Alanis Morissette music. Right?
Wow.
Right. Yep.
I'm going to push you to choose a song.
No, look,
I know.
Canadian.
I know.
You can't do this to
I
me.
can,
It's
though.
not fair. Oh. Well, obviously, I'm hoping that it's not going to have to get anywhere near You Ought to Know. Although I love the rage in that song. You know what? I'm really running with this. And I know that Eloise and Penny would 100% hole up in their bedchambers with their little vitriola playing Ironic over and over again. Because it's just the right level of clever that would make them feel really clever.
I thought of another one.
Mm.
Call Me by Your Name, my little Nas X for Benedict and Henry. But it won't happen. But we can only hope. It can be a great orgy song. I don't know if you need a quartet at an orgy, but why not?
So, something that I noticed when it comes to the classicalized pop songs, all 6 that were chosen, there's not a single person of color, like there's not a single artist that is not white that's in that collection.
Yeah.
Which, like, for a show that wants to pat itself on the back, I'm just saying.
Not doing it cohesively.
I mean, anyway.
I've come
On
up
that-
with my song for Eloise.
I'll go on.
Uninvited.
I don't know that one. I'm so sorry.
Neither.
You don't know Uninvited? Yes, you do. It was the song for
Sing it.
that was City of Angels.
Don't act like I've seen that movie.
No.
Sing it.
Hold on. I cannot. I am not a singer.
I'll cut it out. Also, you sing all the time. Okay, I do know that one.
My black hole of knowledge is music. I don't really listen to music because I don't know why.
So, like, you know how we're supposed to get, I don't know, a prequel or something,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Or the Charlotte and Violet series.
Yes. So I think that that's an opportunity to dip into, like, vintage pop and classicalize something a little bit older. Picture this. It's a ballroom scene. Adele will name it later. Then we hear the sounds of I Want to Dance with Somebody as a string quartet.
With the wallflowers.
Yeah, with
Oh my god.
Violet
I
as a
want this so bad,
wallflower
Rudy.
because she's a wallflower.
Oh my god.
And also
I
the
feel this in
Queen
my heart.
and Lady Danbury. It's actually mostly for Lady Danbury.
I can't.
I think that she deserves Whitney. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my God, Netflix, call us. We could make you the most beautiful series.
When the show first aired, I had also said that I wanted Watermelon Sugar as a string quartet. And
You
I stand by that.
100% Did.
I stand by that. I don't know what scene it's going with. I don't know what character it's going with.
Penelope and Eloise. Done.
I was going to say Michael, but yeah. Colin?
Subtext.
People who enjoy eating is all I... People with a healthy appetite. Just a couple of characters who, yep.
All right, I have a question for the group.
Go. Hit me.
It's something that I've been thinking about an awful lot. And my question is, do you think that Bridgerton, the Bridgerton television universe, is the same universe as the Hamilton, the original Broadway musical universe?
I mean, Hamilton and Bridgerton certainly have the same problem in terms of color-conscious casting doesn't solve the
Racism?
inherent racism of this society you're telling us about.
I'm
and in fact makes it more uncomfortable in some ways, yet continue to be wildly fucking popular. So yeah, go on. I'll buy that. Adele, do you have a question for the class?
No.
Oh. Okay, well, I have one question for the class. Since we finished our recaps, have you guys watched Bridgerton?
No.
No.
I have.
Have you?
How many times have you watched it through, Roots?
5.
I have a question for you. When you rewatched after our deep dives, what was the emotional experience like?
No thoughts, just vibes.
No thoughts,
Oh,
just
cool.
interesting.
Yeah, because we'd spent my 4th watch doing like analysis, recapping, thinking all the time. And listen, that's hard. And so I thought, what if I go back to the start, just like fucking loved it? The scenes that I hated the first time, I continue to not like very much. But the things that I liked, I continue to like. And I feel like there were probably a few other things that I just was like, I like that more now.
What gets worse on repeated watching?
I mean, lots of stuff.
All right, but what gets better?
Also lots of stuff. Jupiter Ascending gets better every time. Every time. When, like, the bees recognize her as royalty, I'm like, fuck yes. And then there's, like, later when Channing Tatum is like, no, I can't make out with you because I'm half dog. And she's like, I love dogs. I love that every time she says, I love dogs. I'm like, this is the best movie.
Thank you to everybody who wrote in. Adele, do you want to announce what season 4 is going to be about?
Can you tell me?
We are very excited to announce the Smith-Smythe Quartet. I won, bitches. And the bitches who voted with me, thank you. If you want to read along, the first book is just like heaven.
I have that book. It's fine. It's good.
That's all for this episode. We'll be continuing our break for a little while longer so we have a chance to recharge our collective batteries. To keep up to date, follow our socials or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcatcher. You can also leave us a rating or review. People who leave reviews are definitely their parents' favorite. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded land of the Gadigal, Wurundjeri, and Boon Wurrung people, and edited by audio producer Rudy Bremer on Gadigal country. Thanks for listening, and remember, WWDD. What Would Danbury Do is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts.